Hello everyone. I am making this video, first video in my new space. I moved into a larger space, still in Eugene, Oregon, but this is definitely much better suited for me. This video is about something I've been thinking about a lot recently, as I've had people ask me, especially, those that have watched my journey and my transformation. They've often asked me, how did you get to where you are now? How did you overcome, dealing with neurodivergence and dealing with the suicidal things and the self-esteem issues and the bullying and all just the different things that I've been through. And it's really important to understand that there is no one singular answer. I've talked about this before, that oftentimes we want a simple solution. We are like, just give me a quick fix, just give me an answer. We are looking for relief. So this isn't about shaming anyone for wanting that quick relief, because I understand why you would, especially if you spent a lot of time hating yourself, feeling, even like this connects to spirituality too, feeling spiritually confused, feeling spiritually lost, not knowing how to make friends, not knowing how to exit your career and start working for yourself, not understanding your different nervous systems and how to regulate them, whatever it is. A lot of times we get to a point where we're so overwhelmed that we are just like, please just give me a simple solution. Please just give me one answer that's going to change everything. And when we see people that are where we perceive them to be further along than we are or have mastered something that we are still struggling with, it makes complete sense why we would want to ask them, right? It's like, please help me understand what you did so I can get to this point too. The problem with that is that you set yourself up for disappointment. And this is something I understand because I've also lived this myself. I have seen other people online. I literally have done this process that I talk about. Seen other people online and just been like, wow, how did they manage to build financial stability? Because that's something that I seem to struggle with, or whatever it was. And at first I didn't consciously realize it, but eventually I did consciously realize that I was looking for just like this simple answer, because I was so tired of dealing with what I was dealing with, And so while I can't give you a simple answer, what I can do is tell you that there are core common denominators that I have noticed across every single area of my life that I have changed. So whether it's nervous system regulation, improving my mental health, developing a cohesive, solid understanding of spiritual reality and subjective spirituality, my own experience, there are 4 core things that I've noticed that people need, okay? And so I want to give these tools to you so that you can begin to work with them yourself and understand. And I think it's pretty interesting that it's 4 different things, because 4 is also numerologically the number of stability. So these 4 things, I'm just going to write them down because I had them in my mind. Now I'm like, oh, I hope I remember. Yeah. Was that the 4? I think so. Okay, so these 4 things have been necessary for me to apply in every single area of my life that I have wanted to change. So across the board, I'm saying health, career, romance, literally whatever it is, this will apply to it, okay? So this is a one-size-fits-all answer, but it's an answer that is also a framework simultaneously, okay? And so these 4 things are: you need time, You need free time, okay? So you need time, first of all. You need to have time. You need to have space. You need to have silence and or a lack of external stimulation. And you also need patience. Patience. Oh no, it wasn't patience. It was curiosity. It was curiosity. That's what it was. Patience is a good one, but no, it was curiosity. I'm glad I remembered. Okay. Patience is, arguably, patience is something you always need as well, but sticking in the framework that I am talking about here. So, time, curiosity, space, and silence. Okay, and I'm going to break all of these down briefly to help you understand this deeper. Okay, so why do you need time? You need time because you need to be able to actually have time to think about things, to ponder, to reflect, to process, to evaluate, right? How are you literally going to make any change in your life if you don't have free time to put towards making that change? You're not going to. So, one of the biggest ways people hinder themselves from making change in life is not carving out time. So you might look at me and be like, well, that's easy for you to say because you work for yourself, you don't have kids, whatever. And you would be correct. But what you're missing is that I chose to live this life. So obviously there's certain decisions that you can't change, right? If you have kids, that you have kids. You can't change that. However, you can change how you structure your day. You can change, say, for example, you spend more time with your kids rather than hiring intentionally certain time blocks for babysitter or daycare or nursery or whatever it is. You can do something like that. So there's always a solution or a way to make time in your day. I didn't used to have time in my day. Because before I was working for myself, I used to waitress. And in order to pay my rent, I was very often working double shifts. So, and even when I wasn't working double shifts, because waitressing took such a big toll on all of my nervous systems and my energy levels, and I naturally need a lot of time to process after being around a lot of people. It's a lot of energy for me to take in and stimulus for me to take in. I was so burnt out and exhausted that I did not have any extra time to devote to building a business, to asking myself questions that I needed to ask myself in order to deeper understand myself and move my life forward. So what I had to do is I literally had to take the risk in starting a whole different career field. Starting a whole different career, getting into a whole different field, because I knew that for me, that was what I needed to do in order to have more time to level up in these other areas of my life that I wanted to. And when I'm saying leveling up, I want to be very clear that it's not about being quote unquote better as if there's something wrong with you that needs to be fixed. When I'm saying leveling up, I'm saying it in a way of you actually liking yourself, you actually liking your life, you actually liking what it is that you do for work. It's sad how the majority of people don't like those things. They don't like what they do for work. They don't like their lives. They don't like how they look. They don't like who they are. There's all these things that they don't like about their life, themselves, whatever it is. And so I personally think that one of the biggest problems in the world is rooted in people not having self-love, not liking themselves, not liking their lives, and not being satisfied. So how do we solve that, right? And that's the leveling up that I'm talking about. So this is great advice for anyone that's interested in becoming a person that they're proud of and living a life that they actually feel is fulfilling. So I'm coming from a place of self-fulfillment and self-empowerment, not fixing oneself or acting as if you are broken and you are missing something. Okay? So again, from my personal experience, I've lived this, right? I'm teaching from what I've lived. I'm not someone that has had things handed to me. I'm not someone that was born into a rich family. And a lot of times I've noticed people, especially online, they like to tell themselves stories about other people because it makes themselves feel better. They're like, well, she had help, or she had this, or she had that. And in a lot of cases, the reality is more confronting and uncomfortable. The reality is that people are actually thinking differently and working differently than you are. They're not receiving some magical help or magical blessings that you're not. It's because they're using their time more wisely. They're thinking differently than you are. They are adopting new perspectives. They are using their time and their energy differently. Okay? They have different daily habits from you. It's all of these things. It's not this magical thing that people like to tell themselves of, oh, they've just had it easy and they haven't struggled and they have rich parents. Sure, that's true in some cases, but in a lot of cases, it's not. In a lot of cases, it's not. So anyway, creating a life for myself where I had a lot of time, okay? And then once I had time, so I personally think that within this framework, time is where you want to start. And then the other three follow that, okay? Create more time for yourself. Find ways to create time for yourself. If you don't know how to do that, ask yourself questions. And that's where curiosity comes in. Why do a lot of people feel lost? Because they don't seek to understand themselves. Why are so many people confused about their life purpose or what they're supposed to do with their life or how to change certain things? Because they're not curious. They're not asking questions. They are just hoping that someone's going to come along and tell them things that make sense, or that some sort of miracle is going to drop out of the sky, or something in their life is going to somehow change. And the reality is most of the time it doesn't. Your life changes when you change. You're the one that sets that change in motion. So curiosity is one of the most underrated tools I'm actually would say in existence. I would take a very probably bold stance and say that curiosity is one of the most underrated skills, tools, and modes of mentally operating in existence. Without my curiosity, I would not have the spiritual understanding that I do. Without my curiosity, I would not know as much about myself as I do. Without my curiosity, I wouldn't have had half the spiritual experiences that I've had. Without my curiosity, I wouldn't have been able to create the spiritual frameworks that I have. Without my curiosity, I wouldn't have I wouldn't have moved here and up-leveled myself environmentally. I mean, curiosity goes into so much. And so what I witness is that a lot of people, they're not curious. For whatever reason, they're not curious about themselves. They're not curious about themselves, and they're not curious about how they can improve their life, how they can find more fulfillment. And so for whatever reason, they just kind of exist in the state of, well, my life just is how it is and I don't know how to change it. And it's like, but why wouldn't you ask? Every time that I don't know something, I ask a question. And to be honest with you, I'm not saying this in a way of looking down on people. I just genuinely don't understand why people aren't that way. I've always been that way since I was a child. I don't understand how you could not be curious. I don't understand how a person could be like, I don't know something about myself and I'm not curious to know. Like, that does not compute to me at all. So again, this is a completely different way of thinking than a lot of people. And so that's the macro explanation. But if you're going to look at it in a micro way, I have asked hundreds of questions, probably thousands of questions. At this point in my life, what am I, 34, 35? I honestly don't remember. I probably asked thousands of questions in my life about myself, about spiritual things I see, about other people, about literally every topic that you could think of, about philosophy, about different things with animals, about fabric, about different art techniques, about gardening, sustainable building. I mean, asking questions about my own self, my own shadows, my own thoughts, where my thoughts come from, why I feel the way I feel, why I respond certain ways in certain moments, what behaviors work for me, what behaviors work against me, what habits support me, what habits don't support me. Am I in alignment? Am I not in alignment? How am I in alignment? How am I not in alignment? All of those questions. There is not a single day where I'm not asking myself multiple questions. Not a single day, okay? So when you have more time, you have more time to ask questions. You have more time to be curious because your time isn't preoccupied with external reality. It's focused on you. So how have I been able to make all these changes in a way that looks really quick to some people? And in some ways it is quick. Certain changes have been quick. It's because I take a lot of time to myself and I ask a ton of questions. And then we're going to get to these other 2 points, which is space and silence. Not only do you need time alone, you need space. You need space alone, but you need space in general to be able to process things. Processing happens in layers for every single person. And the way each person processes is different because we're all such complex beings. Each person's brain chemistry is different. Each person has 7 different nervous systems, and those nervous systems all work in some ways differently for each person. Each person has a different neurophysiological profile. So you need space to be able to even understand how you process things in the first place. Do you understand your own way of processing? Do you know how much time you need to process things? Do you give yourself the ample space to process things? Are you aware of the differences between, oh, that's a pen mark. I was like, what is that? Are you aware of the differences between, how long it takes you to emotionally process something versus processing information that is maybe non-emotional? Are you aware of how your processing is affected in different ways when one of your nervous systems is dysregulated? Do you know what that looks like? Do you know what that feels like somatically? So you need space. You also need space so that you know what is you and what is not you. If you are constantly surrounded by people or other beings or a work environment or whatever it is, how do you think that you're going to be able to know yourself? You're not going to be able, you can't truthfully, if you're constantly surrounded by people, you cannot truthfully know what is yours and what is not yours because you don't have the space or the contrast to be able to know. You are so enmeshed in your environment that you unconsciously will think that certain things are you or are coming from you that aren't. And you won't be able to tell the difference until you have space away from people. Now, space means a bunch of different things, right? So don't project onto this as if I'm saying you need to go live in the woods. I didn't say that. My words are exactly what I'm saying. Anything else that you read into or infer, that is on you, okay? So I'm not saying space means you isolate yourself from people and go live in the woods and, that's an extreme perspective. I would say that's probably not aligned for most people, except for maybe a period of time. If you have a month retreat where you kind of just surround yourself in your own environment and don't talk to people, whatever. But that's not a healthy way of living. Humans are social creatures. We all need to socialize cutting yourself off from modern civilization and telling yourself that you're going to live in the woods and that's being spiritually enlightened is not spiritually enlightened. It's you running away from systems and realities that you don't know how to integrate with and you don't know how to handle. So you think avoidance is the enlightened way. Anyway, that's a whole other tangent for another time. But so you need to allot yourself some time and space to be with yourself. Okay. If you are a busy parent, right? Wake up earlier. 15 minutes, and people are like, oh, you can't. Dude, 15 minutes. Yeah, you can wake up 15 minutes earlier, okay? Nobody's saying you gotta wake up 3 hours earlier. I'm not suggesting some crazy, unsustainable practice. Waking up 15 minutes earlier, going to bed 15 minutes later, making time. And especially I know if you're a parent, sometimes there are just some days where you're not going to be able to make time, right? There are some days where it's like, okay, I can't make time. And that's fine. It's not about perfection. It's about developing a consistency. Consistency doesn't mean every day. It means more often than not. More often than not, do you give yourself some time during the day to sit with yourself? That's good enough, right? So we're not speaking from a place of perfection or unattainable standards or like we're some fucking robots. That would be unrealistic, that would be unhelpful, and it would lead to a lot more shame. And that would be digging yourself in a deeper hole. So creating time, creating space, and in that time and that space, asking yourself questions. Now, I know that sometimes this can throw people off because it's like, okay, I get the concept, I get what you're saying, but then I don't know where to start. I don't know what questions to ask myself. There are so many questions I could ask myself. I totally get that. Right? So this is why self-leadership is important. You need to learn how to lead yourself. Oh, I don't know what to do. Yes, you do. There's a part of you that does know what to do. There is a part of you that doesn't know, but there's another part of you that does know. And if you connect to that part of you that knows, the part of you that doesn't know will know. I promise you that. Because I live this every day. I go through this experience every day, all the time, with everything. Oh, I feel like I don't know. I ask myself. Myself will inform me. Now I know. So again, the lack of curiosity is a huge detriment to a lot of people. The lack of self-inquiry is a huge detriment to a lot of people. This is why a lot of people are underdeveloped emotionally. They don't have a lot of depth. They don't even have a solid character or values that they can speak to because they do not even know themselves. They don't know themselves because they haven't spent enough time knowing themselves and building themselves and creating themselves. Okay? And then the last thing that you need is silence. Now, silence, okay, I'm going to go kind of two different ways with this. On the one hand, silence doesn't necessarily have to be super rigid of, oh my gosh, no sound at all. Hi, buddy. My little cat just walked up. Hey, Pooch. So cute. He likes to walk into my videos sometimes. Adorable little puffball. Anyway, so when it comes to silence, it doesn't have to be literal silence as in, oh my gosh, there's no noise at all. But I do also think that's important, and here's why, okay? So a lot of us, especially anyone that lives in the more modern world, okay, which is at this point the vast majority of humans, we are surrounded by sources of stimulation all the time. Noises, online, phones, talking to people, music, consuming content, all these things, right? There's nothing wrong with stimulation. It's not an inherently bad thing, okay? Nothing I'm saying has an inherent judgment on it, really. It's just about how you use the tools and how you use things. So what's happened, though, with a lot of people is that they're constantly consuming things and they're constantly stimulating themselves. And then they need all this time to process all this stuff that they're consuming that's stimulating them, that they're not aware of. And so this all takes up space in your mind, in your energy field, in your body, somatically. Do you think we have infinite space? Because we don't. And this is part of why people go through burnout without realizing they're going through burnout, is because they go through cognitive burnout. They go through energetic burnout from consuming a bunch of content all day, from watching too many reels, from listening to too many different kinds of music and getting overstimulated, to listening to too many tarot readings. It can literally be anything. So what happens with too much overstimulation? Dysregulation. And then also, like I said, you don't have the time and the space for you. If you are constantly working, whatever, with your kids, or you're constantly working on your career, or whatever it is, say that you're just working, whether it's you're a mom or you're working a job, or whatever it is, whatever your form of work is. If you're working most of the day, and then when you're not working, you're just consuming content, you are overloading yourself every single day, whether you are aware of it or not. You're going to get to a breaking point. And not only that, you are leaving absolutely zero time for you to know yourself, understand yourself, sit with yourself, or develop any self-awareness. All you are doing is focusing externally. How do you think that you're going to know yourself focusing 100% externally, or even 97%? You're not going to. You're not going to. So again, you need to carve out time and space for yourself. And some of that time also needs to be just in silence or not being stimulated by things. A lot of you guys really are not giving yourself the ample time and space and proper container to make the changes that you want to make. You have to make these habitual changes. You have to make these changes of orienting your time and your energy differently. It's not just going to come from thinking differently. I'm all about perspective shifts. As you guys know, I love perspective shifts. They are amazing. They are huge tools. There's no doubt about that. But just thinking differently alone is not enough. You need to act differently. You need to move differently. You need to decide differently. You can sit there and think all day about how, I'm going to, do this differently today and do that differently today, and then not actually do it, right? So the thought doesn't matter as much as you think it does. The thought and the perspective, sure, that matters to a degree, but it also doesn't. There are many days where I don't fucking feel like doing something. I'm not thinking about how fun it is or how exciting it is. I'm like, this fucking sucks. I don't want to do this thing. This is annoying. And I will complain about it in my mind the whole time, but I'm still doing it, right? It's not the thoughts. It's not the way I'm thinking about it that's making me do it. I'm choosing to do it because I hold myself to an unchanging standard. That standard doesn't change based on how I feel. That standard doesn't change based on, I'm a Leo and I have ADHD and blah, blah, blah. The standard never changes. The standard never changes. So anyway, I would love to hear how this landed for you guys. If you can, what you can recognize about yourself in this, which of these 4 things do you need to apply more? And you're welcome to leave a comment or just to reflect on it with your own self, So these are the 4 biggest keys I feel that I have consistently maintained over the course of the past 5 years, probably longer, but I'm going to say 5 years just to be like, to not overestimate myself, but I'm quite sure it's been longer.